Um, Happy Earth Day, everyone. It's Fran Pavley just filling in for the day as your chair of this committee hearing. It's April 22nd, and this is a meeting of the Wildlife Conservation Board. As you can read, we'll be focusing today on stream flow enhancement. And pleasure for me to be able to fill in as a former chair of the State Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee. I know how important this topic is. And we're here because you, the voters, approved and passed Proposition 1 back in 2014. It was a water quality supply and infrastructure improvement program. And there was $200 million set aside to be appropriated by the WCB for projects that enhance stream flow to benefit downstream water supply and water quality for people, agriculture, fish, and wildlife. So it is a pleasure for me to be here today and had an opportunity to review not the 70 applications, but the projects before you on the agenda. The applications were reviewed by a panel with the Wildlife Conservation Board and other agencies involved. And we're here today to review the agenda items before us. As you can see, items 5 to 22 are recommended for approval and are on the consent calendar. If any member wishes to take an item off for further discussion, just let Director Donnelly or myself know. I'll be glad to accommodate you. And then we have items 23 through 34 that will be discussion items and presentations to the board. And Director Donnelly has advised me that file item 24 will be postponed. So if you're here for that, you may want to return at a later time, up to you. So let's go ahead and start the meeting and stay on track today. And Director Donnelly, if you would please call the roll.
Great, thank you, Senator and Board Member Pavley, and thank you again for filling in for Chairman Bonham today. And we do have Val Termini filling in for Chuck. And then we do have a different finance representative. Sally Lukenbill will be sitting in for the Department of Finance today. So with that, I'll do the roll call. And then after the roll call, I would like to just set up some meeting logistics and how the meeting will be run today. So with that, Board Member Pavley.
Here.
Board Member Termini.
Here.
Board Member Lukenbill.
Here.
Board Member Silva.
Here.
And Board Member Colborn.
Here.
Great. And I know Alina, Board Member Oakday and Board Member Kreisman will not be with us today, but with their absence, we still have a quorum, Madam Chairman.
Very good.
With that, just some quick meeting logistics today. As folks can recognize, the meeting is being conducted via Zoom. For those using the telephone system, there is a telephone number that accommodates the meeting as well. And you can follow along and hear and participate through the phone. But then also, if you want to see the presentation that'll be given today, please go on to the WCB website and pull down the presentation for today's meeting from the meetings tab, and you can follow along the presentation that way. If you're using the phone system, you will need to press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Also, during the public comments session and comments period, if you'd like, I would like to ask that folks use the raise hand function, which is found both in the Zoom platform as well as on your telephone. And on the computer screen, there's a little icon at the bottom, I believe. It's a raise hand function. So just press that, and we do have staff that's moderating that. And I will be moderating that as well. But if you're on the phone and you wish to make a comment and you want to raise your hand, you press *9, and that'll raise your hand on the phone. And then we can see that. The format of the meeting will complete the first few agenda items, which are 1 through 4. And then we'll take the consent calendar and take any questions, comments from the board, and then ask any if there's any public comment. If there's, and then following public comment, we'll ask for additional board comments. If there's none, then I will read the motion and then we'll have a roll call vote on the consent calendar. So we'll move into the presentations, which start at item number 23, I believe. Staff will present the project. I'll notice any letters of support or opposition for the project. And then ask for board member comments and subsequent public comments. And then we'll move on to the next item. Like the previous WCB virtual board meetings, we've had one motion for all the consent calendar items and one motion for the presentation calendar. But I want to, and if you're okay with that, we'll do that again today. However, I want to remind board members, if there's any particular item that you want to act on separately or independently, we're prepared to act independently and provide a roll call vote for any particular item that you want to do that on. Otherwise, we'll take it as one package. And I think that's all. So if there's any questions about meeting process, board members, I'll be happy to answer those. If not, we'll get into the agenda. All right, seeing none. And board members, I would like to, you're part of a panel, you're on the panel list. So if you do, if you want to just say something, feel free to speak up. Obviously you will, but you don't need to raise your hand and we'll call on you. If you want to say something, feel free to raise your hand or speak up. All right, seeing none, we'll get into item number 2 on the agenda. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to address the board on any agenda or on any item that's not in the agenda. So I want to restate that's not in the agenda. If it's a project that you want to talk about and is in the agenda, please wait for that item to come up. If not, this is your time to address the board. And we have 2 speaker cards that we've received. One from Conrad Fisher on item number 2. So Conrad, if you're on.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you all. Thanks for your time today. So I remember some of you, I think about 6 years ago, I commented on measuring cost effectiveness. I was part of a group that released a report somewhat in response to the Stream Flow Enhancement Fund. So today I'll just quickly make 2 points. And in the past, you were able to have some back and forth. If you can, great. If not, I understand. First point, when the Stream Flow Enhancement Fund was enacted, my understanding was that it was intended to provide benefits greater than required by law. On many streams in California, including the Scott and Shasta rivers, we haven't yet settled on how much water is required by law. So I'm just wondering how you all perceive that to interface with funding projects to restore flow when we have not yet quantified what's required by law. Just quickly on this Shasta, that includes the water action plan requirement to quantify flows required. And on the Scott, there's already a fish and game recommendation. So both of those rivers have the ability to have flows quantified by law established. So I'm just wondering how we know we're not spending public money to pay people to do what the law already requires. That's one point. Happy for feedback. The other is the report I put forth and helped organize and gave to the Wildlife Conservation Board a long time ago. Sorry, I have not been able to talk about it since then. Was about measuring cost effectiveness of environmental water transactions. So that includes not just transactions intended for a 1707, but any transaction whose goal is to restore flows. And I would love some back and forth now or at some point on whether or not the Wildlife Conservation Board is collecting data that report recommended or data necessary to measure cost effectiveness in a very basic way, dollars in, per minute in-stream flow dedication out. I went through the proposals and don't see that data is gathered in a concise way. So if it's not yet happened, I would love to keep talking to staff about how maybe to make that happen. The author of the report measuring cost effectiveness of environmental water transactions looked all over California and could not find anywhere where the right data was gathered to allow measuring cost effectiveness, and it was only the Deschutes Basin in Oregon where it was possible. So 2 points, benefits greater than required by law, and if we haven't yet started collecting data to measure cost effectiveness, can we?
Great, thank you. And we'll follow up with you, Conrad. I don't want to get into the discussion today. We'll follow up.
Okay,
Okay, the
well,
next-
for the purpose of deciding whether to allocate money today, I would just ask that, like, let's consider whether we truly know that there is an in-stream flow benefit, if that is what the projects say. And when accepting the baseline from an irrigation district, for example, I think we need some independent verification of the numbers of baselines and things like that. So, okay, I'll be quiet.
Thank you. All right, the next on the item number 2 is Nick Joslin. Nick Joslin, are you on?
Can you
All
hear
right.
me now?
Yes.
Okay. My comments kind of in the same vein as Conrad's. As we look to be rounding a corner with respect to public health and COVID-19, we understand that state and local budgets have been severely impacted. We're pleased to see that the WCB is awarding roughly 4/5 of the allotted budget for stream flow enhancement this fiscal year. Because these monies come during a year when budgets are tight and stream flows are at historically low levels, we feel it is more important than ever to stringently evaluate the outcomes of these projects. In many cases, an analysis may only consider individual projects on a least cost approach basis. The reality on the ground, though, is that while money could be awarded for specific problems and specific reaches of a stream, many projects have ultimately fallen short when the stream is analyzed in a broader sense. We believe that the manners by which we measure effectiveness need to improve. We must move from single reach basic cost effectiveness and towards broader analytical tools that will allow agency managers to compare the true value of stream enhancement projects across the entire state. This would allow the development of volumetric cost effectiveness analysis. Further development of this approach will allow more careful funding of projects whose stated goals will not only get more water into streams, but also obtain that stream flow enhancement at the best cost to the state taxpayers. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I have no other speaker cards on item number 2. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Please raise your hand now. I see David Webb's hands up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Donnelly. I'm sorry, I did turn in a speaker card, but it somehow must have got lost in the shuffle. So I would like to speak to 2 things. First, I'd like to concur with the last 2 speakers on the need to have an adequate method to both pre-screen projects and to track them after the fact to make sure that we get the results that we're all paying for. Along with that, the Friends of the Shasta River, who I'm speaking for, shares your eagerness to put Prop 1 and other monies to work as the generous people of California intended. And despite that eagerness, we are heartened by the fact that you chose not to fund every project proposed up to your funding limit this year. Not because the results aren't needed, but because it says that you and your staff have the ability and the integrity to winnow out most of the bad from the good. And that's really important. Given the dire straits we are in, those choices are truly commendable, even if terribly, terribly sad to us, and I'm sure to you also. Having been instrumental in securing grant funds for the Shasta River over many years, I need to emphasize the need to have a shared process with other grant funders for evaluating in-stream flow projects with clear-eyed rigor behind it. Other funders will be cost sharing or solely funding similar projects. If you are exercising greater rigor than they are, then the bad projects will simply be shopped elsewhere, and we will still wind up paying for something we didn't get. You have the stature to take the lead on developing a shareable evaluation process as touched on by Conrad Fisher of Water Climate Trust. I hope you can, I hope you will initiate a process like that with the full intent of sharing it with other grant funders so that they cannot game the system by simply going around you and looking elsewhere. If there's anything we on the Shasta River can do to help with that effort, we will be more than eager to provide what we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Webb. Okay, any other comments for items not on the agenda at this point? All right, seeing none, we'll move into the consent calendar, or no, we'll move into item number 3. Staff, and the presentation that you'll be hearing in items 3 and 4 will kind of go to some of the comments that were made during the public comment period or time. So with that, I'll introduce Adam on our staff, and he'll kind of kick off how we went through the process this year. Adam?
Thank you, John. Good morning, members of the board. Next slide, please. All right, so through the passage of the Water Quality Supply and Infrastructure Improvement Act of 2014, or Proposition 1, funding was made available to implement the objectives of the California Water Action Plan, which include more reliable water supplies, restoration of important species and habitat, and more resilient and sustainably managed infrastructure. Proposition 1 authorized $200 million for appropriation to the Wildlife Conservation Board to fund projects that result in enhanced stream flow. These funds are administered through the Stream Flow Enhancement Program, a statewide competitive grant program. The program's defined enhanced stream flow as a change in the amount, timing, and/or quality of water flowing down a stream or a portion of a stream to benefit fish and wildlife. In addition, the program is placed to focus on multi-benefit projects that enhance flow in streams that support anadromous fish, support threatened, endangered, special status, or otherwise at-risk species, and/or provide climate resilience. Projects funded through this program must be voluntary. Projects undertaken to meet mitigation or compliance obligations are not eligible for funding. Next slide, please. The program's been able to fund a diverse array of project types. This includes water conservation projects such as off-channel storage, changing in the timing or rate of diversion, rainwater catchment, irrigation ditch lining and piping. We've also done habitat restoration actions such as wet meadow restoration, reconnecting flood flows to restored floodplains and forest thinning, as well as water and land transactions and other activities. These projects are generally grouped within the 4 broad categories, which include scientific study grants. So here we're funding projects to assess the effectiveness of previously implemented streamflow projects or inform the design and implementation of future projects. Planning grants that provide funding for environmental compliance, permitting, design, and other related activities that will lead to an on-the-ground implementation project. Implementation grants, which fund construction of restoration and enhancement projects and new or enhanced facilities that will enhance stream flow. And acquisition grants that fund purchase of land, water rights, or interests in land or water that lead to a direct stream flow enhancement. Next slide, please. Through the 2020 proposal solicitation notice, approximately $50 million was available for award. Of this amount, $3 million was set as a cap for scientific studies. The call for proposals began on July 9th and closed on October 1st, 2020. And the submission deadline was extended from September 10th to October 1st in response to the wildfires that were burning throughout much of the state at that time. Through the course of the notice, the program received 70 proposals requesting $101.7 million in funding. Next slide, please. The proposals were then evaluated through a multi-tiered review process. The initial step was an administrative review. So here the applications are being reviewed for completeness, adherence to the requirements established through the proposal solicitation notice. All complete and eligible proposals were then evaluated and scored by at least 3 technical reviewers using the scoring criteria documented in the proposal solicitation notice. Following completion of the technical reviews, a selection panel consisting of managers and staff from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Wildlife Conservation Board, and State Water Resources Control Board was convened on January 27th, January 28th, and February 2nd, 2021 to develop a list of projects recommended for funding. The selection panel took into account several factors during their deliberations, including the technical review comments and scores, anticipated stream flow benefits, as well as other co-benefits, project readiness, feasibility, durability, current and previous investments in the subject watersheds, and the degree to which projects were supporting the program's goals. The projects recommended for funding by the selection panel were reviewed by the WCB Executive Director in preparation for today's meeting. Next slide, please. The selection panel ultimately recommended 31 proposals for funding at a value of approximately $39.8 million. And this included 4 scientific studies at $1.4 million, 15 planning projects totaling approximately $9.4 million, 10 implementation projects totaling approximately $23.6 million, and 2 acquisition projects totaling approximately $5.4 million. Next slide, please. This map is aimed to provide a quick snapshot of the distribution of the projects being considered for funding today, which are represented by the orange circles, in relation to the projects that have been previously awarded funding through this program, which are shown in blue. A couple of things to note are the relatively good spatial distribution. We've had expansion this year into a couple of new areas, including tributaries to the Sacramento, such as Deer Creek and Yuba River, and the proximity of several of the recommended projects to previously funded projects. This is likely due to a number of factors, including prior investments in scientific studies and planning leading to the next phase of a project, or concentration of effort in watersheds with active regional partnerships, such as the Russian River watershed, that have the capacity and capabilities to pursue and implement these projects. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll conclude my introductory remarks. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Adam. Board members, do you have any comments, questions for Adam or me?
I do have a question. I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand, so can I just speak? This is Diane Colborn. Yeah, I just had a question with regard to Adam mentioned in his presentation that the funding under this program is the statute doesn't allow it to be used for actions that are required to meet mitigation or other regulatory legal requirements. And so I just was wondering, with regard to the question or point that one of the public speakers brought up, when you have situations where you have a stream or a water body where what's required legally is maybe still unresolved, how do you address that? And or did that not come up with any of the projects that we're looking at today?
Are you able to answer that, Adam?
Well, I'll take a shot at it. I think, what we're working from is what is the current circumstance in each of these water bodies. And you're right, we need to be able to confirm that any of the projects funded through this program are providing benefits above and beyond an existing compliance obligation. So that's what we're working from, is the circumstances that are available at this time and what are the compliance obligations at this time.
So for example, you might have a project where there's a temporary requirement, but until, if there's things that are in court or whatever, until that's resolved, there's any additional requirement currently. Do I understand what you mean? Okay.
Yes. Okay, is there any other board member comments or questions?
Yeah, I had just
Yeah.
a quick comment, John, if I may.
Please.
Water is challenging, and I support the comments made by the public at the beginning of the meeting, and also board member Colburn. We eventually had to, in the climate world, develop protocols when we realized we couldn't manage what we couldn't measure, in order to determine the effectiveness of programs. This is going to be challenging in this moving climate affecting water supply, especially in periods of drought. So that's an ongoing concern. But I noticed that quite a few of the projects on today's agenda were applications for measuring devices and tools and things like that. I think they're very cognizant of the fact that they do need a better way to measure not only temperature, but flow, and when it rains, how to store it. And so the scientific database is coming along, and it's a moving target with these changing circumstances. So that was just my commentary, looking at all the projects in general. Very interested in tools and devices and gauges.
Yeah, and I think as we see, the drought continuing and the climate changing, I think those kinds of tools are only going to be that much more important. And so I'm glad we're considering the investment in those resources today. The other point that I'd like to make about, the baseline requirements is we work really closely, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife's streamflow program staff is part of our process. They're, engaged in what we're doing. They're, technical reviewers on all of our projects. So from that perspective, we do have, the experts engaged in this program. And so I'm comfortable, going forward that we would not be funding, if a stream is identified and a base flow is identified and approved and set, I have confidence that we would not be subsidizing that flow. We would be enhancing that flow over time. So I hope that helps a little bit. And as we, work through the program and as we work over the next couple of years, we'll be able to report back to the board on more of that kind of work and where we've made enhancements and what those enhancements and actions have really meant on the ground. So we're preparing to do that. I actually have staff right now, Rebecca Friss, the assistant exec, she's working with a retired annuitant to start gathering data on projects that the board has already funded, and really what does that mean from a streamflow perspective, and what does it mean for the program going forward. And so we're looking at that data right now. We're assimilating that data, and I don't have an exact, but it'll be out sometime this year, and we'll present back to the board at some point this year. So I know we're working on the data collection and, really trying to understand on a statewide scale what our projects, what your projects really mean for streamflow enhancement going forward. All right, any more comments on that? Any public comments on items 3 or 4?
Yeah, there's a couple questions in the chat, John, that I could relay. They're
Okay,
pretty
yeah, please do.
straightforward. Yeah, just for Adam, there's not a lot of action in the San Joaquin Valley. So is there an issue that you aren't getting applications in that region, or is that it's not a priority? Can you speak to that?
The program's funded a couple of projects in the San Joaquin watershed through its history. We haven't received a large number of applications though either. I don't have the number right off the top of my head of the full scope of what the program's received through the first 6 years. But generally, I believe we've received a fairly limited number of proposals from that region. We do have a couple underway at present. We've done an acquisition down there, in-stream dedication, and a couple of other things.
Great. Also, do any of the projects use their funding for more than one category?
The categories are generally discrete. Implementation has to be discrete because CEQA has to be complete prior to an implementation proposal being brought to the board. So we keep those things separate. I think the only instance where there may be a little bit of overlap is we may have an acquisition that has a little bit of planning work related to, say, a 1707 dedication. But generally, the intent is to keep the categories separate.
Great, thank you, Adam. All right, I see no more hands raised. So anybody else have any comments? Otherwise, we'll move into the consent calendar, items 5 through 22. All right, so with that, the consent calendar today includes items 5 through 22. Is there any board member comments on any of the items, or would the board like any item taken off consent and presented?
Just a quick question, John. This is Colborn again. Am I correct in assuming that there was no opposition, formal opposition received to any of these projects that are on consent?
There were not. No,
Okay.
We have significant number of letters of support, and
Sure.
I won't read all those into the record.
That's
today.
okay.
I will
Yeah.
read those letters in the presentation, but we have not received any opposition on any of the consent items.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any public comment on any of the consent items? We do have several letters of, or not letters of support, but speaker cards that were submitted for consent items. And there appear to be all in support. So I will call all those names, and please, I think Amy Campbell is actually the one with the Nature Conservancy has sent in. She's the only one really on the list that would like to speak on on consent. So Amy.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, so my name's Amy Campbell. I'm a project director for the Nature Conservancy's California Water Program. And I'm really here today to express my support for multiple projects that are on the consent agenda and open for potential board approval. And those agenda items are numbers 5, 6, 7, 9, and 20. And all of the work that's described in these projects help advance either the science or the restoration of functional flows in streams and rivers that have high freshwater biodiversity here in California. All of these proposals are doing so in partnership with the people that also seek water security, whether that's in their agricultural or domestic water supplies, especially as we continue to face drought and a changing climate. So myself and my TNC colleagues thank the board for your consideration and support for these projects that really work to balance the water needs of people with the water needs of nature here in California. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Amy. Right, I have on item number 22, Landon People sent in a speaker card. Landon?
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Wildlands Conservancy is pleased to accept and receive the funding award of $3.2 million from our longstanding partners at the Wildlife Conservation Board. This award will provide the funds needed to acquire the Hayden Ranch, a 6,095-acre property. With
Actually, Landon, just a minute. That'll be presented, that project, and I'll call on you then. We have a speaker card for item number 22. Or Otay Valley, or do you want to hold off and talk about the Hayden Ranch?
Just the Hayden was all I
Okay.
had in mind.
All right, then hang on, okay? And I'll
Will
call
do.
you up during that particular item. All right, any other comments from anyone? Seeing no hands raised. Okay, so what I will do for this is, if the board's okay with this, I'll read the motion and then ask for you to move that motion and to second it, and then I'll take a roll call vote. So staff recommends that the Wildlife Conservation Board approve all individual projects identified by the selection panel as suitable for funding up to the amounts listed for each, and listed as consent calendar items 5 through 22 as identified in the Wildlife Conservation Board Stream Flow Enhancement Program fiscal year 2020-21 final agenda. Allocate a total of $8,488,692 from the Water Quality Supply and Infrastructure Improvement Act of 2014, Proposition 1, Water Code Section 79733. Authorize staff to enter into appropriate agreements necessary to accomplish these projects, and authorize staff and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to proceed substantially as planned. So does somebody want to move that?
I can move it. Oh, Rod can second it.
Second, whatever.
Okay, so Val moved and Diane second. So Senator Pavley, remember Pavley.
Aye.
Board Member Silva,
Aye.
Board Member Termini.
Aye.
Board Member Colborn
Aye.
and Board Member Lukenbill.
Aye.
Great, thank you. The motion passes, Madam Chair. All right, moving into presentations now. Item number 23. Let me get there, sorry. So this is a proposal to consider an allocated grant to the Wildlands Conservancy. Mr. John Walsh on our staff will present the project. John?
Thanks, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
This project involves a grant to the Wildlands Conservancy to facilitate the Hayden Ranch acquisition. The property is located on the East Fork of the Scott River, which is near Callahan in Siskiyou County. Elevations within the property range from 3,200 to 5,500 feet. The location of the property provides important connectivity with public and other conserved lands. The property consists of 6,095 acres and provides significant spawning and rearing opportunities for California Endangered Species Act listed coho and Chinook salmon, as well as habitat for steelhead trout and riparian nesting birds. In addition, the Hayden Ridge portion of the property serves as a migration corridor for black-tailed deer, and most recently, Roosevelt elk have been observed moving into the property to graze the meadows. Next slide, please. Hayden Ranch has implemented water use efficiency improvements, including replacement of an unlined ditch with a pipeline and changes in irrigation practices, which reduce conveyance and on-farm water losses, allowing for a portion of the water rights to be dedicated in stream pursuant to California Water Code Section 1707. The proposed acquisition will support these earlier efforts and strengthen their intended benefits for stream flow enhancement by dedicating at least 50% of the remaining water rights for in-stream benefit. In addition, during critical water years, all available water rights will be committed to in-stream uses, except for the water necessary to keep the residences livable, recreation facilities functional, and stock water available for ranching operations. The habitat focus for the stream flow enhancements is to improve summer rearing conditions for juvenile coho salmon and migration for fall run Chinook salmon. Next slide, please. The Wildlands Conservancy will work directly with CDFW to use the best available science to inform decisions regarding water and other natural resources via the development of a preserve management plan that focuses on salmonid habitat, stream improvements, diversion and in-stream water quality monitoring, and prescriptive management of the property's grazing program and forest ecosystems, among other management actions. Additional objectives of the acquisition are to maintain working landscapes and a sustainable ranching tradition, and to increase public access and recreational opportunities. Staff recommends project as proposed. In the audience, we have Fraser Haney, he's the executive director with the Wildlands Conservancy, and Landon Peppel, resources conservation director.
Great, thank you, John. Is there any board member comments or questions? All right, seeing none or hearing none. So for speakers for this one, we do have 2 speaker cards. So Landon, this is the item I think you wanted to talk about. So please speak up.
Thank you, John. Apologies for the confusion earlier. The Wildlands Conservancy is pleased to accept and receive the funding award of $3.2 million from our longstanding partners at the Wildlife Conservation Board. This award will provide the funds needed to acquire the Hayden Ranch, a 6,095-acre property with 2.5 miles of East Fork Scott River frontage, and with its valuable water rights at the headwaters of the Scott River watershed. TWC has renamed the property to Beaver Valley Headwaters Preserve, a testament to the region's once plentiful beavers prior to the 1830s, where trapping for furs nearly extirpated this keystone species. The addition of Beaver Valley Headwaters Preserve is TWC's 21st preserve and will become part of California's largest nonprofit preserve system, encompassing more than 163,000 acres. These preserves are owned and operated by TWC and made available to the public free of charge for passive recreation and outdoor education, with more than 1.4 million annual visitors. With the support of partners at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Scott River Watershed Council, the Scott River Water Trust, and among many other conservation groups in the region, we're eager to roll up our sleeves to enhance stream flow, restore riparian and hydrological connections, and provide direct, measurable improvements to the stream flow and bring back the beavers. And with that, I hope for a brighter future for salmon and steelhead in the sky. We appreciate consideration by WCB for the support of protecting stream flow and salmonids in the watershed, and we look forward to showcasing the outcomes of this important award. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Landon. Next is Hugh Cox. Item 23.
Hello, good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning. I'm Hugh Cox. I'm the Hayden Ranch Project Manager for the Trust for Public Land. And I'm speaking in enthusiastic support for this acquisition on the East Fork of the Scott River. The key benefit of this project is the protection of aquatic habitats within and adjacent to the property. This includes enhancing significant spawning and rearing opportunities for California endangered species listed coho and Chinook salmon, as well as habitat for steelhead trout and a suite of riparian nesting birds. Additionally, the property serves as migration corridor for black-tailed deer and Roosevelt elk. And there are also important additional benefits, most notably that the acquisition of Hayden Ranch will provide public access to this magnificent habitat-rich ranch land for hiking, camping, fishing, nature education, and enjoyment, as well as trail access and connection to the surrounding public lands and the Pacific Crest National Scenic Trail. Our partnership with the Wildlands Conservancy has been an exemplary instance of bringing the best skills and experience of two organizations together to achieve a significant conservation outcome. TPL is excited about TWC's plans for the ranch, and we are confident TWC will be a fantastic steward of this land and water. Finally, I would like to commend and thank the WCB staff and board for your attention to this project and for the recommendation for funding. Thank you for your hard work, dedication, and thoughtful approach to conserving valuable lands and waters such as the Hayden Ranch property.
Great, thank you. Is there any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, I do want to add for the record letters of support on this project that we've received. Nessa Charna Gilmore, Executive Director of the Scott River Watershed Council, and Preston Harris, Executive Director of the Scott River Water Trust, and the Hayden Ranch Family Limited Partnership. So I see no more hands raised or comments. So if the board's okay, we'll move on to item number 25. As Board Chair Pavley mentioned at the beginning of her opening remarks, we will be deferring item number 24 at this time. We'll move on to item number 25. So item 25 is to consider a grant to Humboldt County. Adam Ballard on our staff will present this project to the board this morning. Adam.
Thank you, John. So this proposal is to consider the allocation for a planning grant to Humboldt County for a cooperative project to conduct planning activities needed to support the release of water from the Trinity River Division of the Central Valley Project for in-stream uses to benefit fisheries in the Trinity River and Lower Klamath River. Project area includes the Trinity River from Lewiston Dam to its confluence with the Klamath, and the Klamath River from the Trinity River confluence to the Pacific Ocean, encompassing portions of Trinity, Humboldt, and Wilmore counties. Next slide, please. Through the 1955 Trinity River Division Act, Congress authorized the Trinity River Division as an integrated component of the Central Valley Project to increase water supplies for irrigation and other beneficial uses in the Central Valley. Section 2 of the 55 Act, however, included two provisos that limit that integration. Proviso 1 directed the Secretary to ensure the preservation and propagation of fish and wildlife through adoption of appropriate measures, including minimum flows then deemed necessary in the Trinity for the fishery. And Proviso 2 specified that not less than 50,000 acre-feet shall be released annually from the Trinity Reservoir and made available to Humboldt County and downstream water users. In recognition of Proviso 2, similar condition was included in a 1959 water delivery contract between the Bureau and Humboldt County, as well as the Bureau's water rights from the state of California. However, Reclamation historically asserted the view that Proviso 2 should be read in conjunction with Proviso 1 and not as a separate release requirement. Next slide, please. The Trinity River Division began flow regulation and water diversion on the Trinity in 1960. Initial flow regulation diverted up to 90% of the Trinity River to the Central Valley, leading to significant impacts to habitat conditions and salmonid population declines. A study in the 90s, which is the Trinity River Flow Evaluation Study, found that high flows are necessary in the Trinity in order to maintain and restore salmon. In 2000, the Department of Interior directed that approximately 50% of the river's water would remain in the river, and that the Trinity River Restoration Program would recommend how water was to be released for restoration of the river and its fisheries. These restoration flows are achieved through a variable annual in-stream flow regime based on annual forecasted hydrology in the basin. The flow regime aims to mimic the snowmelt hydrograph for the basin, with higher flows focused in spring and early summer and relatively low base flows from July through March. In 2014, the Department of Interior solicitor issued a memorandum that concluded the two provisos in the 55 Act represent separate and independent limitations on the Trinity River Division's integration with, and thus diversion of water to the Central Valley project, and recommended that Reclamation conduct an appropriate level of analysis in response to a request for release of the water under Proviso 2 to determine potential uses of that water might be put and other applicable legal requirements that must be addressed prior to releasing said water. The need for this project is created by the legal and compliance steps that must be completed for Reclamation to release the Proviso 2 contract water. Next slide, please. Examples of potential uses for this Proviso 2 contract water include augmentation of winter flows to increase salmonid rearing habitat and increase geomorphic flows to promote creation and maintenance of riverine habitats in Upper Trinity. In addition, the feasibility of using the water to increase cold water pool in Trinity Reservoir to ensure sufficient quantity of cold water for release into the Trinity River to support juvenile and adult salmonids will be explored. Project will involve a number of planning activities, including stakeholder engagement, evaluating a range of water management and climate scenarios, performing hydrologic analysis to develop flow schedules, performing fish habitat and fish production modeling to optimize benefits for the fisheries, exploring approaches to minimize impacts associated with water deliveries to the Sacramento River, and creating a water management plan that provides a structure and process for annual decision-making and identifies the anticipated uses of the Proviso 2 contract water over a 25-year planning period. It also involves developing a strategy for environmental compliance. The completion of this work is the first step in the process towards making the Proviso 2 contract water available for release for the optimal benefit of fishery resources in the Trinity River and Lower Klamath. To conclude, staff recommends the board approve as proposed. Participating in the meeting today and available to assist with any questions are Hank Seaman, Deputy Director of Environmental Services with Humboldt County Public Works, and Steve Madrone, Humboldt County 5th District Supervisor. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Adam. Before I ask for comments, I do want to get into the record letters of support that we received for this project. I did receive a letter from Senator Mike McGuire, Joseph James, Chairman of the Yurok Tribe, Darren Myro, North Coast Director of CalTrout, Michael Conroy, Executive Director, Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Association. So is there any board member comments or questions on this particular item?
I've had a question, John.
Yeah.
It's Fran. And it's just generic to several of these items, just for clarification purposes. I noticed a lot of people are very interested in watershed management plans or water management plans. Is that required or part of a process relating to updates of general plans or requirement of water districts or irrigation districts to at some point in time have a water management plan? Or and I may not be articulating this correctly, if they're part of a integrated regional watershed management district, I assume that they have a plan. What I'm trying to say is I'm going through these items and they're all worthwhile projects on how to make sure in the future that we aren't replicating problems and challenges that were result of past problems in managing land use or water quality or water supply, so that we don't duplicate those problems and have to fix them in future years. So I just didn't know if there was a role in the state for sort of looking at more of a comprehensive water management plans in various parts of the state where water supply and water quality are going to be so critically important in our future.
Right. I think, the projects that we fund, I think that it'll enhance those planning processes that are going on. I don't think it'll take the place of any of those. The other thing is, the state adopted and the governor issued the State Water Action Plan a few years ago. So I think what we're doing and what we see going forward is that, our projects will enhance those processes. They won't take the place of those. And Adam, I don't know if you want to add anything, because you're pretty tied in with a lot of those local actions that are going on. Do you have anything to add?
I think you've covered it pretty well, John. I think where they exist, these projects are aiming to integrate into them. And then there's certain locations where this is sort of the first foray where they're sort of building the structure for organized processes within their watershed.
Yeah.
So there are, as Fran noted, there are provisions in Prop 1 related to some of the eligible entity types as well. So, if a municipal water supplier or irrigation district supply, there's requirements relative to some of the planning initiatives being implemented related to their activities as well. So yeah, I think it's coming in through a couple of different needs.
Yeah. And then I think our scoring, correct me Adam if I'm wrong, but our scoring in the solicitation process, it adds some points to projects that enhance planning that's going on, it recognizing current planning that is going on. So it provides a little more point security for a project moving forward if the project enhances that planning work that's already going on.
We've got, I think it comes in through sort of the multi-benefits element of the scoring criteria, where it's sort of speaking to, the diversity of benefits that the project provides and sort of how it's integrating into the regional landscape, I think is where that's coming through.
So, I just follow up on one thing that struck my attention. If someone today wanted to put a road and a bridge through a meadow, because I know we're restoring a meadow in one of these projects, is that now caught through a CEQA process where it wouldn't have been 50 years ago or whenever that was put in? I just trying to minimize mistakes in the future.
Right, yeah, I think, that kind of an example, yeah, SQL would kick in.
That's what I figured. There's some review measures that are in place. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, any other board member questions? Okay, seeing none or hearing none. We do have a couple of speakers for this one. So first up is Steve Madrone, County Supervisor. Steve, and I should have said this starting out, but if you could, for the record, because this meeting is being recorded, if you could state your name and your affiliation, that would be helpful. So, Mr. Madrone.
Yes, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this. As we all know, water is life, and this funding will set the stage for improved Salmonid restoration to benefit our entire community, including our very vast tribal community. It's long overdue, and I'm going to keep it very brief. You have a long meeting. I just want to say how much we appreciate the board's support, the staff support for this project, and I'm going to let Hank Seaman add to this, but thank you very much for your consideration for our proposal here today.
Great, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So next up is Hank Seaman.
Good morning. I'm Hank Seaman, Humboldt County Public Works.
Good morning.
And I just wanted to emphasize that this is really a significant breakthrough to move forward with this long-standing water contract that has not been recognized and honored by the Bureau of Reclamation for a number of reasons. And leading up to this grant, we've developed collaborative partnerships with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, our tribal partners, CDFW, and conservation organizations. So we're really in a good place to do technical studies to understand how we want to use this water to benefit fisheries. Also opportunities to minimize impacts to diversions to the Sacramento River and coordinate with the Trinity River Restoration Program. Our ultimate goal is to develop a fishable surplus in the Trinity River and Lower Klamath. And, in terms of the question about the water management plan, here in this case, the Bureau of Reclamation has water rights. Humboldt County has a contract right. The Bureau will need to make some changes to their water rights. And this water management plan will support the basis for making those water right changes. This plan will also define the proposed action that will allow us to determine how CEQA and NEPA apply, as well as Endangered Species Act consultation. So it really provides that solid defined action that we can then work through all the legal and regulatory compliance. So really appreciate WCB's support. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Seaman. All right, any other public comments? I see no hands raised, no chats. Okay, any final board member comments or questions? Great, so we'll move on to item number 26 in the agenda. This is to consider a grant to Sanctuary Forest for a grant for the North Fork Lost River Flow and Habitat Enhancement. Alyssa Purcell on our staff will present the project to you. Alyssa.
Thank you, John. This proposal is to consider the allocation for an implementation grant to Sanctuary Forest for a cooperative project with Lost Coast Forest Lands LLC to improve streamflow and fish habitat on the North Fork Lost River. The project site is located in coastal Mendocino County, about 20 miles south of Garberville. The Lost River is a tributary to the Mattole River and was seen as an ideal spot for a streamflow enhancement project, as there are no human water diversions on the Lost River. Historically, the Lost River supported abundant native populations of coho salmon, Chinook salmon, and steelhead trout. However, in drought years, summer streamflows are insufficient to support rearing as pools become disconnected and dry up. Next slide, please. The project will restore geomorphic, hydrologic, and ecological processes to a 5,200-foot reach of Lost River in order to address key limiting factors for salmonids. Within most of the Lost River and the project reach, limiting factors include channel entrenchment, loss of floodplain connectivity, reduced groundwater storage, low summer flows, and lack of pool habitat. The project has three primary objectives, which are intended to recover stream habitat essential to salmonid production: streamflow enhancement, in-stream and floodplain habitat enhancement, and fish passage improvements. Next slide. Streamflow benefits will be achieved through installation of in-stream channel spanning structures with subsurface clay restrictive layers and stage 0 channel regrading. 2 terrace ponds will be constructed to provide metered flow into the project reach during the lowest flow period between August and October. Channel entrenchment and disconnected floodplains will be reduced and partially eliminated, and in-stream and floodplain habitat will be enhanced by raising the stream bed to engage with the floodplain, increasing pool depth, and adding in-stream habitat complexity through wood placement. The project is designed to restore natural processes over the long term, promoting the formation of a complex meandering stream and wetlands. Staff recommends that WCB adopt the written findings and approve this project as proposed. Tasha McKee-McCorkle from Sanctuary Forest is on the call and can help answer any questions about the project.
Great, thank you, Alyssa. For the record, we have received letters of support from Congressman Jared Huffman, Senator Mike McGuire, Molly Brown, Arcata Field Manager of Bureau of Land Management, Matea St. John, Executive Officer of California North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, Sarah Broom, Executive Director of the Mattole Restoration Council, Richard Sykes, Executive Director of the Mattole Salmon Group, Timothy Metz, President, Restoration Forestry Incorporated, and Jamie and Joseph Cook, private citizens. So is there any board member comments or questions on this particular item? All right, I have, seeing none, hearing none, I have no speaker cards for this particular item. So is there any, oh, there's a one hand raised. So Tasha McKee. Corkle?
Hi, this is Tasha McKee-Corkle from Sanctuary Forest. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So I wanted to just say a few things about this project and express my appreciation to Alyssa and the entire board and staff of Wildlife Conservation Board. So thank you for funding our early pilot projects in 2016. And we have learned so much. We've learned that it's very much more difficult to enhance stream flows than we originally thought. And we are dealing with this increasing drought, which makes it hard to do the measurements. And I was listening to what Fran Pavley had said about the need for tools. And I wanted to speak to that just a little bit. So first of all, we have incorporated everything we've learned from doing those pilot projects that WCB and the State Coastal Conservancy funded over the last few years, including upslope groundwater recharge projects and in-stream projects. And what we've learned is that we needed more different approaches to make it work. And so what's really different about this project than the past projects is that we are increasing groundwater storage through similar ways by putting the log weirs in the streams. But we're also seeing that in these really bad drought years, and last summer really taught us this, that once the flows drop to less than 10 gallons a minute coming into the project, that the pools start shrinking and that we only buy maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months of time, but we still dry up and the fish have to be rescued, which they were in the summer of 2020. Coho were rescued downstream of where this project is. So we have included upslope ponds that have a pipe where water will be metered. There'll be basically a tap and water will be metered into the stream and the upslope end right near where the cars parked there. And this is one of the upslope areas where one of the ponds is going to be, to provide 9 gallons a minute for the driest months, August and through October. And so it's this combination of approaches that's really unique here. Yeah, that's mainly what I wanted to share with you guys, and just thank you so much for the opportunity to be considered for this project, where we've really taken everything. And then with the measuring, we're measuring different parameters because flow is getting to be less every year. Last year was the lowest flows. We're also measuring the length of the dry reach and the length of pool habitat and the length of riffles. So we had CDFW come out and do a training with us. So we're doing that pre and post project. We're measuring the groundwater levels pre and post. So there's a number of comparisons you can still make to see if you're improving things within this extreme drought situation. So I think that's all. And unless anybody else has any questions for me.
Great, thank you, Tasha. Right, any board member questions?
I don't have a question, but I just had a comment. I just really appreciate the speaker who just spoke, giving us that additional detail about the lessons learned and how they're incorporating this into the project. And I just hope that as the project goes forward, that there will be good written documentation of the process that you go through and the results, so that other groups that are working on similar types of projects can benefit from what you've learned. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for that, Diane. We work really closely with Stillwater Sciences. They're our engineer. And one of the things I'm finding out that I really appreciate is that they work with other restoration groups throughout California. And I'll get a call from these other restoration groups saying, hey, we're going to try out your underground clay dam that you guys are trying, that we hear is a really good way to slow subsurface flow and keep the groundwater there longer. And what more can you tell us about that? And so we also disseminate the information through our grant reports and through other partners and through conferences like the one going on today, the SRF conference. But it's really one of the great things about the restoration community is the level of collaboration. And of course, we share everything we learn because we want other places for the fish to be recovered, but also because this is public money. We consider all this work we do to be part of helping the public.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, any other board member comments or questions? All right, seeing none. Moving on to item number 27. The Navarro River Outlet Creek Flow Enhancement and Planning Project. This is to consider a grant to the Mendocino County RCD. Adam will present this project. Adam? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thanks, John. This proposal is to consider the allocation for a planning grant to the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District for a cooperative project with the Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited to conduct planning activities necessary to support future implementation projects designed to enhance stream flow in the Navarro River and Outlet Creek watersheds. Next slide, please. The Navarro River watershed shown here on the left panel is the largest coastal basin in Mendocino County, encompassing approximately 315 square miles. The Navarro River flows northwest through the coastal range, reaching the Pacific Ocean about 2 miles south of the town of Albion. Within the Navarro River watershed, project-related activities will occur within Mill Creek, North Fork Navarro, including its tributaries such as Fling Creek, Soda Creek, and Nephis Gulch, and the main stem of the Navarro River. Outlet Creek, shown on the panel on the right, is a tributary to the Eel River, draining a watershed of approximately 158 square miles. It flows northeasterly from near the vicinity of Willits, entering the Eel River about 7 miles northeast of Longvale. Within the Outlet Creek watershed, project-related activities will occur within Outlet, Davis, Berry, Ryan, Brodus, and Bechtel Creeks. Next slide, please. Due to the Mediterranean climate, many of the region's rivers and streams experience critically low flows or even dry up during late dry season months. Increased frequency of droughts and rising temperatures due to climate change have further exacerbated the situation. These impaired stream flow conditions threaten the health of streams and survival of salmon, salmonids, and other native species, while also reducing water supply reliability for farms and communities that depend on the streams to meet their water needs. Recovery plans for listed anadromous fish that occur in these two watersheds identify low dry season flow as a major limiting factor for species recovery and call for implementation of stream flow enhancement actions to reduce dry season diversions and increase dry season flows. California's rural watersheds need a collaborative portfolio of flow enhancement strategies and techniques that foster collaboration among water diverters, support the habitat needs of fish and wildlife, and improve water security for communities. Next slide, please. This planning project will further successful strategies that have been developed in the Navarro River watershed with previous stream flow enhancement program support, including grants previously awarded to the Mendocino County RCD in 2016 and 18. As I noted earlier, this project will conduct planning activities needed to support future implementation designed to enhance stream flows and support recovery of listed salmonids while also improving water security. In the Navarro River watershed, efforts will be focused in Mill, North Fork, Navarro, and associated tributaries in the main stem of the Navarro, with representative actions including community water management planning, planning and design of storage and forbearance, infiltration, and large wood augmentation projects, planning for coordinated diversion schedules, and planning to evaluate the use of storage ponds to augment stream flow in the dry season. Within Outlet Creek watershed, the project team will prepare a flow release feasibility study that includes conducting outreach to owners of reservoirs whose sizes and locations make them well suited for potential flow augmentation, and ultimately negotiating specific terms of flow release transactions with willing landowners with a goal of developing at least one flow release project to a stage where it can be pilot tested to demonstrate feasibility and effectiveness. Note that any of the pilot testing for flow releases would be conducted with separate implementation funding and all the necessary approvals. Project will also continue implementing a complementary monitoring program, including stream flow gauging, water quality monitoring, and wet-dry mapping, and the project reaches to evaluate stream flow conditions. And so to conclude, staff recommends that the board approve the project as proposed. Participating in the meeting today and available to assist with any questions are Linda McElwee, Project Manager with Mendocino County RCD, Matt Clifford with Trout Unlimited, and Monty Schmidt and Jen Kara with the Nature Conservancy. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Adam. For the record, we have received letters of support from Congressman Jared Huffman, Senator Mike McGuire, Assemblymember Jim Wood, Matthias St. John, Executive Officer of the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and Patrick Miller, President of Anderson Valley Land Trust. With that, is there any board member comments, questions for staff? All right, seeing none, hearing none. I have not received speaker cards, but if is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this, please raise your hand or speak up. All right, whoop, there's a hand. Linda McElwee?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the board for your consideration of this really important project. And just to, on the coattails of what Tasha McKee was saying earlier, this is what is needed is this multi-pronged approach. So there is some complexity to this project, but to restore flows in these North Coast streams, this is really what is needed is this, coming at it from many different directions. So we're building on a program that, as Adam stated, since 2016, and as we're implementing and planning as we go, and we're exporting now a successful program in Mill Creek to the North Fork Navarro and the main stem Navarro, and then also over into Outlet Creek. So we are, as we go developing this program, the intent is for it to be exportable to other regions, just as we've been learning from up in the Mattole and down in the Sonoma County watersheds. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Linda. Any other comments? All right, seeing none. Moving on to item number 28. Thank you, Adam. This is the Deer Creek In-Stream Flow Planning and Design Project. This is to consider a grant to Trout Unlimited. Alyssa will present the project.
Proposal is to consider an allocation for a planning grant to Trout Unlimited for a cooperative project with the Nature Conservancy, Deer Creek Irrigation District, and Stanford Vena Ranch Irrigation Company to meet stream flow targets in Deer Creek. The project focus area spans the lowest 11 miles of Deer Creek from the DCID headgate to the confluence with the Sacramento River near the town of Vena. Next slide, please. The cool waters of the upper and middle reaches of Deer Creek support Central Valley spring run Chinook salmon, steelhead trout, and numerous other native fish species. Streamflow in the lower watershed is affected by 3 irrigation diversions. The farthest upstream is the DCID diversion, which may legally divert approximately 33% of the creek's flow. The Stanford Vena diversion is located 5 miles upstream of the confluence with the Sacramento River and may take 64% of the flow. Between these 2 districts is the smaller Cone Kimball diversion, which serves users having rights to the remaining 3% of the flow. The project is a component of a larger strategy for meeting streamflow targets in the Deer Creek watershed, being pursued by a collaborative group including Trout Unlimited, the Nature Conservancy, CDFW, and the local irrigation districts. Recent efforts have addressed fish passage issues at the DCID diversion, and the Stanford Vena diversion is undergoing design and permitting to increase fish passage and improve screening. The project will build on these diversion improvements and develop specific voluntary measures to reduce existing water diversions from Deer Creek. The objectives of this planning project are to produce a 65% design, permits, and management plan for a groundwater substitution project that will reduce diversion from Deer Creek to the Sheep Camp Ditch and the Cone Kimball Ditch on either a seasonal or permanent basis. Produce a reconnaissance level report identifying specific opportunities for water savings, including on-farm efficiency, conveyance efficiency, and groundwater recharge. And produce an integrated water management plan for meeting flow targets in Deer Creek by managing the cumulative water savings from all current and future projects and conjunctively managing groundwater as needed to ensure sustainability. Next slide. Staff recommends that WCB approve the project as proposed. Ben Cook and Matt Clifford from Trout Unlimited are on the call to answer any questions.
Thank you, Alyssa. For the record, letters of support from Keith Bentz, President of Deer Creek Irrigation District, Mike Wallace, President of the Stanford Vina Ranch Irrigation Company, Mr. Darrell Wood, owner of Diamond X Ranch, and Grant Leminger, Justin Hamilton, and adjacent landowners. So with that, is there any board member comments or questions for staff?
I had a question.
Yes.
This is Fran. I was curious about the general ability around the state for watershed management and in-stream flow concerns and how it integrates with SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan. Is there generally some collaboration in that? Because there's, in some areas, these are severely overdrafted groundwater basins, and yet the storage is needed. So I just didn't know procedurally how that communication works between multiple objectives.
Yeah, I think there's ongoing communication. Adam, you can chime in too. I think, there's a multiple effort of collaboration, I think, among, those oversubscribed water basins, with oversubscribed stream courses. I think there's a lot of conversation going on right now, of which WCB is part of some of those discussions. We're starting to fund some of those kinds of planning processes. I don't want to put the district on the spot, but maybe the district would like to speak up and kind of talk about how they are handling that, the SGMA requirements, as well as what we're trying to do here today and how they overlap and what kind of coordination is going on.
Yeah, I was looking for some models. So yeah, I was interested.
Yeah. So is Deer Creek Irrigation
So,
District? Yeah.
We have Trout Unlimited.
Can folks hear me? This is Matt Clifford. I'm a staff attorney with Trout Unlimited and the applicant for the project. Yeah, this is a good question. I'd be happy to address because groundwater is an important piece of what we're looking at with on our Deer Creek projects. The thing that is actually an asset and a really good thing we have going for us at Deer Creek is a very prolific local aquifer that's recharged at a pretty high rate from the Sacramento River and the Sierra Nevada runoff. And I can say that with some confidence because we actually have a separate grant from a different WCB program where we've hired a couple of firms to model the underlying local aquifer for us, because we think that seasonally that a big part of the solution can be to, during really dry times, to use conjunctive use and switch very strategically to groundwater during times of low flow when fish are migrating, particularly the months of April, May, June. And so we modeled the aquifer and found pretty promising initial results that, for that kind of use on the scale that we would need to supplement surface flows, the aquifer really has a tremendous amount of capacity. We think we could get a fair amount of water without having adverse or unsustainable effects on the aquifer itself or other users. And the firms that we're working with, David's Engineering and Ludorf and Salmonid, are actually some of the same firms that are working locally on under the SGMA process. And so we're in good communication with the SGMA folks locally, and we're confident that whatever we come up with for a solution here is gonna comply with SGMA and take into account groundwater effects.
Great, thank you, Matt. So did that help, Senator Valley?
Yes, I was, because I'm concerned that maybe in many places in the state, there isn't that ongoing communication to work together. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Presentation.
Thanks. Is there any other board member comments or questions? All right. Is there any other public comment? I have no letters of support. Great. So we'll move on to item number 29. Upper Lacey Meadow Restoration. This is a project to consider a grant to the Truckee River Watershed Council. Adam will present you the project.
Thank you, John. So this proposal is to consider the allocation for an implementation grant to the Truckee River Watershed Council for a cooperative project to restore condition and function to about 100 acres of meadow habitat at Upper Lacey Meadow, benefiting stream flow, supporting resilience to climate change, and improving habitat for numerous wildlife species. The project is located approximately 2 miles upstream from Weber Lake and about 14 miles southwest of Sierraville and about 16 miles northwest of Truckee, sort of orient you to where we are at. Upper Lacey Meadow occurs on lands owned by the Truckee Donner Land Trust and the U.S. Forest Service, located primarily within Sierra County, with a small portion extending into Nevada County. Lacey Creek is a headwater stream that drains 9.6 square mile watershed on the east side of the Sierra Nevada crest and is the hydrologic support for Upper and Lower Lacey Meadows. Lacey Creek is a tributary to the Little Truckee, which flows to the Truckee River. In 2010, WCB contributed approximately $5 million to the acquisition of fee title for Weber Lake and Lacey Meadows. And subsequently in 2019, the board's Climate Adaptation and Resilience Program contributed just less than $300,000 to support the planning work needed to implement this project. Next slide, please. Lacey Creek is incised through Lacey Meadow. Past and human activities, including road building, channel modifications, and grazing impacts, have contributed to the degradation. In the Lacey Creek watershed, roads are responsible for stream capture, excess runoff, meadow desiccation and degradation, and hill slope and in-channel erosion. Channel modifications and manipulations of natural stream patterns in montane meadows were common practices over the last century or more, and there is evidence that channel modifications occurred in Upper Lacey Meadow. Lacey Creek appears to have been diverted at the upstream end of Upper Lacey Meadow, likely through construction of one or more gravel push-up dams combined with road capture. And the creek now flows through a straight channel along the edge of the meadow and then rejoins the historic alignment approximately 2,500 feet downstream. Sheep grazing is part of the historic and ongoing land use in the meadow, and sheep tend to congregate near the creek for a source of drinking water. Bank trampling is often a consequence and accelerates bank erosion and channel migration. Cumulatively, these disturbances have resulted in channel downcutting or incision, further promoting meadow desiccation and conversion and habitat degradation. At present, groundwater levels are up to 9 feet below the ground surface during the growing season, which does not provide support to meadow species. Incised channel, the primary flow limiting factor in this system, appears to be acting as a drain on the surrounding shallow groundwater table. Next slide, please. Project will implement a variety of meadow restoration techniques, including restoring natural flow paths and hydrologic function through channel relocation and fill, promoting stream channel aggradation with in-stream log and boulder structures, implementing improvements to address road-related impacts, and implementing grazing practices that protect restoration work and maintain ecological function of the meadow and creek. Key objective being the reversal of channel incision to support more frequent channel floodplain connectivity that supports groundwater recharge and storage. This will support a more robust, diverse plant community within the meadow, provide colder and more persistent base flow longer into the dry season, improve water quality, provide resiliency to climate vulnerabilities, and improve habitat conditions for numerous wildlife species, including willow flycatcher. To conclude, staff recommends the board adopt the written findings and approve this project as proposed. Beth Chrisman, Director of Restoration Programs with the Truckee River Watershed Council, is participating in the meeting today and is available to assist with any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Adam. We have received one letter of support for this from Mr. John Savan, Associate Director of the Truckee Donner Land Trust. Is there any board member questions for staff, comments? All right, seeing none, is there any, I have no speaker cards for this particular item. We do have Beth Chrisman has her hand up. Beth.
Hi, I just wanted to say this is Beth Crispin with the Truckee River Watershed Council. And thanks for that great presentation, Adam. And I just really wanted to say thank you for considering this project. As Adam mentioned, WCB has already invested heavily into the Lacey Meadows watershed. And I also wanted to mention your support of the Perazo Meadows project, which is just downstream from this. also supported through streamflow funds. And one of the really unique opportunities we have with the Lacey Meadows and Prazo Meadows system is we've instrumented the inflows and outflows of all the meadows, and we have a pretty long stream gauging record, especially for Prazo Meadows. So we're getting to the point where we can really quantify the effects of restoration on the hydrology of meadows and streams in the Sierra Nevada. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah, thanks for all your support.
Great, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none. Is any final board member questions? Great. All right, we'll move on to item number.
All right, John, it looked like there was something in the chat. I don't know if you wanted to take that question.
Maybe this is a question for Beth. How about introducing beaver to help restore Upper Lacey Meadow? We'll follow up.
Okay, yeah, there we go. I got the unmute. So currently aren't any beaver in this part of the watershed. So we are not actively looking to introduce beaver to this site. However, a lot of the structures we're proposing perform a similar function to beaver dams in terms of promoting channel aggregation. Log jams are very common in Upper Lacey Meadows, so we're mimicking that natural process that's occurring in the system with much of the same effect as beaver would have.
Great, thank you. Okay. Moving on to item number 30, the Hallwood Side Channel and Floodplain Restoration Phase 3 and Phase 4 project. This is to consider a grant to the Yuba Water Agency for a project in Yuba County. We do have new staff today. Erin Aquino Carhart, she's new, came on board about 3 weeks ago. I do want to welcome her, and this will be her first presentation. So Erin, do you want to take it away?
Thank you, John, and good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So this proposal is to consider the allocation for an implementation grant to the Yuba Water Agency for a cooperative project with Tykert Aggregates and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And this will be to restore and enhance the Hallwood side channel and floodplains in the lower Yuba River, benefiting stream flow, juvenile salmonid rearing habitat, and flood risk prevention. The project occurs on two private aggregate mining operations north of and contiguous with the Yuba River. The project site is approximately 8 miles northeast of Marysville in Yuba County. Next slide, please. So the lower Yuba River historically has excellent salmonid rearing habitat for fall run and spring run Chinook salmon and Central Valley steelhead. It has been under degradation for the riparian and aquatic habitat due to agricultural activities, gravel and past gold mining activities, and other land uses that have impacted stream flows. And what's of particular interest is that this project reach is constrained by a tall linear cobble embankment or training wall that are remnants from historic hydraulic dredges in the early 1900s. And the photo you'll notice is the middle training wall that this project seeks to remove. Next slide, please. So the project will enhance stream flows and increase rearing habitat acreage by removing the middle training wall and increase channel connectivity, construct perennially and seasonally inundated channels to increase connectivity and create additional off-channel habitat, and will also include focused riparian planting to provide structural complexity and cover for rearing juveniles. And this will also provide flood risk protection or reduction benefits by reducing flow velocities, surface water elevations, and scour potential from the remaining draining walls and other infrastructure during large flood events. Next slide, please. And this is an example from one of their earlier phases. So phase 1 is from their pre-project actions, and the photo on the left is from pre-project actions, and the photo on the right is from after they finished grading. And you'll notice that there is a wetted channel in the post-project photo. And in conclusion, staff recommends that WCB approves this project as proposed, and Jeff Matthews with the Yuba Water Agency and April Sawyer with CBEC Eco Engineering are here on the line to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Erin. You did a great job for your first WCB presentation, so thank you. So with letters of support that I received for the project, we did receive a letter from Congressman John Garamendi, Baker Holden, third Deputy Project Leader of Lodi Fish and Wildlife Office of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Charlie Matthews, Chairman of the Cordua Irrigation District, and Mike Felice, Hallwood Irrigation Company. Is there any board member comments or questions for staff?
I just have one question. I'm just curious whether, is there any concern and how would it be addressed about mercury? You know, there's history of hydraulic mining there, that in the construction of this, are we disturbing mercury, and how is that addressed, if so?
Erin, do you want to, can you take that, or is the project partner on?
I do believe we have project partners on the line, and I would prefer that they would answer that question because I don't believe I know specifically any.
Yeah, Jeff Matthews, are you on the line? That would be.
Oh, April Sawyer has her hand raised.
Yeah, April.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is April Sawyer. I'm project manager at CBEC Eco Engineering. To answer that question, this area has a, as you have observed and are aware, a legacy of hydraulic mining washing down from the Sierras. From the early 1900s through, or I guess, late 1800s through the mid 1900s, the area was subsequently dredged multiple times over for additional gold mining and gravel mining, and a lot of those fine sediments have been kind of turned over to some degree, washed downstream, or leaving a lot more of the coarse sediments that mercury is less likely to absorb to. But we are tracking the mercury potential availability as a result of restoration by, we have an elevated mercury action plan whereby we split the project up into several sub-regions and then are collecting samples within areas with fine sediments and then submitting those results to the State Water Resources Control Board as part of our permitting with them, as well as any areas do show any elevated mercury. We are performing actions of riparian plantings to stabilize any fine sediments in those areas. So we're aware of it, and we've taken action with the appropriate level to track that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, April. Any other board member comments or questions? All right, seeing none. Is there any public? I have no speaker cards for this. Any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to item number 31. This is the Trapper Forest Health Restoration Project in Yuba and Sutter counties. It's to consider a grant to the National Forest Foundation, and Adam will present the project. Adam.
Thanks, John. So this proposal is to consider the allocation for an implementation grant to the National Forest Foundation for a cooperative project with the U.S. Forest Service and Blue Forest Conservation to conduct approximately 1,308 acres of ground-based fuel treatments that will include hand cutting, hand thinning, and hand piling small diameter trees located in overstocked forests, which are in an unhealthy condition. The project is situated on public lands within the Yuba River Ranger District of the Tahoe National Forest. The center of the project area is located east of New Bullards Bar Reservoir, approximately 5 miles northeast of the community of Camptonville. Most of the project area is located within Sierra County, with a small portion extended into Yuba County. This project is part of a large-scale forest restoration project that will reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire and improve ecosystem health in the Yuba River watershed through treatments of over 15,000 acres on the Tahoe National Forest. Next slide, please. The project area contains West Side Sierra mixed conifer forest that has been altered from its historic condition. Many of the trees within the project area were cut approximately 170 years ago during the gold rush to provide lumber for mines and surrounding communities. This has caused the project area to exhibit a uniform aged second growth forest that lacks the structural diversity of the old growth forests that once dominated the landscape. In addition, multiple decades of successful fire suppression have removed fire as a process that naturally thinned the forest, and this has resulted in overstocked forests with unnaturally high tree densities and fuel loads. These small diameter trees present a dual challenge as they have led to increased water demand by forest vegetation and serve as ladder fuels that lead to high intensity catastrophic wildfire. Next slide, please. The activities funded through this project will cover approximately 1,300 acres of ground-based fuel treatments that include hand cutting, hand thinning, and hand piling with small diameter trees. Specific objectives of the project include restoring forest habitat health and resilience through fuels reduction, increasing stream flow through the reduction of vegetation water demand in overstocked forests, and reducing catastrophic wildfire risk to forest habitat and adjacent communities. The project will address two of the major disturbances in the region: wildfire risk and drought. First, the reduction in fuels and small diameter tree thinning will reduce the amount of ladder fuels, modifying fire behavior to keep the fire on the ground instead of in the canopy, where it will become more severe and do more damage. Secondly, the lower vegetation density will reduce competition for water during drought years, enabling the trees that remain to have a higher chance of survival. In addition, recent research has demonstrated an increase in stream flow as a result of vegetation reductions associated with forest thinning. Changes in stream flow will be monitored through the grant period and beyond through an innovative satellite-based approach of water balance assessment being developed for forest health and restoration projects over the entire Yuba watershed. One additional item to note: on April 12th, 2021, the Secretary of California's Natural Resource Agency signed a certification for this year pursuant to Public Resources Code Section 4799.05. which provides an exemption from the California Environmental Quality Act for prescribed fire, thinning, or fuel reduction projects undertaken on federal lands that reduce the risk of risk of high severity wildfire if the projects have undergone NEPA review. NEPA review for this project was completed by the Forest Service on December 16, 2020. Subject to approval of this project by the board, the notice of exemption filed with the State Clearinghouse will reference this statutory exemption instead of the two categorical exemptions identified in the final agenda. To conclude, staff recommends the board approve this project as proposed. Joining us today and available to assist with any questions are Bree Tiffany, the California Program Associate for the Tahoe area with the National Forest Foundation, Phil Saxa, Chief Scientist at Blue Forest Conservation, and Melinda Booth, Executive Director of the South Yuba River Citizens League. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Adam. So for the record, letters of support was received from Alonzo Henderson, Yuba River District Ranger, U.S. Forest Service; Ellen Shaw, Acting Director of the National Partnership Office of the U.S. Forest Service; Willie Whittlesey, General Manager, Yuba Water Agency; Melinda Booth, Executive Director of the South Yuba River Citizens League; Roger Bales, Professor of Engineering and Management at UC Merced; Zach Knight, CEO and President of Blue Forest; Todd Gardner, Director of National Infrastructure Initiative, World Resources Institute; Mr. Tim Bills, Director of Sierra County Department of Planning and Building Inspection; and Dan Winterson, Bay Area Conservation Program Director of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. Was there any board member questions for staff?
I had one question, John.
Yeah.
just looking at different branches of government, notice this is national forest. Don't fault the merits of the project at all. But I was sort of curious why CAL FIRE isn't engaged. It really is primarily focused on, yes, healthy watersheds, etc., but also fire suppression, reducing fuel load, and there's a lot of multiple benefits in this project. So I was just curious if there were other agencies, whether it's our own CAL FIRE, which has access to funds and not enough funds for doing what they need to do, but also on the federal level as well, in joining us in trying to reduce fuel loads. I just got back from Yosemite and looked a lot at former forests that are completely devastated from the fires and affecting downstream water quality everywhere. So if you could just talk to how agencies are working together to collectively respond to healthy forests, fire suppression, and reducing fuel loads.
Yeah,
Sure.
so Fran, how about if I take an initial shot and then we'll get Bree Tiffany or one of the other project proponents to fill in around the edges.
Because
So
there'll never be enough money in the stream flow account to do this statewide.
yeah, so we're proposing here a specific element of the broader Trapper Forest project. So there's a broader initiative over 15,000 acres for the Trapper Forest. The Yuba River Partnership is engaged in that, so that's a multi-agency collaborative. CAL FIRE, I believe, does have funding related to some of the work in this region as well. So it's an effort to bring to bear funding across multiple funding agencies to implement these critically necessary projects in the watersheds. And maybe this would be a good point for me to pass the mic to either Bree Tiffany or Phil Saxo or Melinda Booth to really sort of give you the more in the weeds detail of their region and what's happening.
Hi, this is Bree Tiffany from the NFF. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you for that background, Adam. Yeah, and I would just add, so like Adam said, you know, this is 1,308 acres of the larger 15,000 acre Trapper project that we're working collaboratively with the Forest Service and Blue Forest Conservation and other partners on. But it's really part of a much larger 275,000 acre North Yuba Forest Partnership Initiative that's looking at the entire North Yuba River watershed, and it does encompass this Trapper project. And through that initiative, we're really working to restore overall forest and watershed health across that entire watershed. And we're engaging multiple different state and federal agencies throughout that process and looking to partner with as many agencies as possible. So that's kind of the broader context that this project sits within. And if Melinda and Phil have anything to add, happy to pass to them as well.
Thank you for that information on it being just a small part of a broader context. It seems to be a statewide challenge as well.
Right. And just to reiterate too, this project for us, particularly for this particular program, the effect on stream flow will be monitored and reported over time. And, you know, there's been evidence that this kind of work actually does enhance. And there's evidence that, you know, these kinds of projects do increase stream flow. So, you know, we're kind of looking at it from that perspective. It's a multi-benefit project. But that was the first thing that we looked at, is how are we going to benefit stream flow by doing a forest restoration project? And the evidence showed that, yes, by doing these kinds of projects, the benefits to the stream.
I've read several reports on the benefits of the healthy watersheds and healthy forests and how that work together. I think Union of Concerned Scientists has done some work in that regards too, and it is all interconnected. So thank you for that presentation and information.
Yep. All right, any other board member comments? No speaker cards. Is there any other? Melinda, do you want to say something? on the booth?
I don't necessarily have anything
Okay.
else to add, but happy to share more information as needed.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any other public comments? All right, seeing none, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 32, the Mill Creek Water Storage for Flow Enhancement Project in Sonoma County. This is to consider a grant to Trout Unlimited. Alyssa will present you the project this morning. Alyssa.
Thanks, John. This proposal is to consider the allocation for an implementation grant to Trout Unlimited for a cooperative project with Sonoma Resource Conservation District and Sonoma County Water Agency to construct water storage and forbearance systems in the Mill Creek watershed. A tributary to the Russian River, Mill Creek is characterized by mixed hardwood, chaparral, and conifer forest, vineyards, timber harvest, and rural residential properties. Old logging roads and unsustainable logging practices have had detrimental effects on the hydrology of the watershed over the years. Next slide. Mill Creek and its tributaries have been identified by state and federal fisheries agencies as providing some of the best remaining habitat for endangered coho salmon in the Russian River watershed. Insufficient summer flow is a primary limiting factor for the survival of rearing coho and steelhead. The project will implement winter water storage on multiple private properties in the Mill Creek watershed. Participating landowners will commit to forbearance of an equivalent volume of water in the summer, thereby shifting the timing of water extraction to leave more water in Mill Creek during the driest time of the year when juvenile coho and steelhead are rearing in the stream. A minimum of 18 storage systems will be constructed, totaling 300,000 gallons of water storage. The stored water source will vary based on the resources available at each property, ranging from rainwater catchment to direct diversion, wells, and springs. The total benefit to stream flow is estimated to be at least 0.2 CFS, which can be enough to keep pools connected, boosting survival of juvenile salmonids. Next slide, please. When it comes to stream flow enhancement efforts in Sonoma County, wildfire danger has inevitably become an important part of the conversation. As residents rebuild, adding more water storage infrastructure to the landscape is of great interest, as stored water serves an additional benefit as a firefighting resource in remote areas. The project was already in development with members of the Mill Creek community in response to the increasing occurrence of catastrophic wildfires in Sonoma County and across California. The LNU lightning complex fires struck in August 2020 as the applicant was preparing this proposal to WCB. The Walbridge fire engulfed 84% of the Mill Creek watershed, underscoring the need for projects that combine streamflow enhancement with water security and fire protection. Staff recommends that WCB approve this project as proposed. Mary Ann King from Trout Unlimited and Katie Robbins from Sonoma County RCD are on the call and can help answer any questions.
Thanks, Alyssa. So for the record, letters of support, I did receive a letter from Assemblymember Jim Wood, Supervisor James Gore of Sonoma County, Jason Boaz, City of Healdsburg Fire Chief, Grant Davis, General Manager, Sonoma Water Agency, Mateus St. John, Executive Officer of the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and Mark Farmer, Dan Grout, Monica Munoz Torres, and representing the co-leads of the Mill Creek citizens organized to prepare for emergencies. With that, is there any board member comments or questions for staff? Right, seeing none. I have no speaker cards, but I do see one hand raised. And let me find it. I can't find it. So somebody has their hand raised. Who wants to speak on any public comment? Mary Ann King.
John, that's me, Mary Ann King from Trout
Yeah.
Unlimited. I just wanted, speaking on behalf of the whole project team, to say how excited and enthusiastic we are to work on this project if funded. And we really do see it as an effort to couple streamflow enhancement with wildfire preparedness and also the rebuild effort. So it seems especially relevant and topical at this particular moment in time. And I really want to thank Alyssa for the great explanation and her work on this, and the Wildlife Conservation Board and the review committee for considering it. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Any other public comments? All right, seeing none. Any last board member comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 33, the Salmon Creek School Water Conservation Project in Sonoma County. This is to consider a grant to the North Coast Regional Conservation and Development Council for a project. Mr. Scott McFarland on our staff will present the project. Scott.
Thank you, John, and good morning, board. This proposal is to consider the allocation for a grant to the North Coast Resource Conservation and Development Council for a cooperative project with the Harmony Union School District to eliminate an annual extraction of up to 1.5 million gallons of water from a shallow near stream alluvial well used for playing field irrigation at Salmon Creek School, which is located immediately adjacent to Salmon Creek main stem on the Bohemian Highway in Occidental, approximately 14.5 miles upstream from the mouth of the creek where it enters the Pacific Ocean. As you can see on the map, Salmon Creek is a coastal watershed in western Sonoma County. It supports threatened steelhead trout as well as a population of endangered Central California coast coho salmon. Next slide, please. Starting in 2008, the Russian River Coho captive broodstock program has released up to 300 coho into Salmon Creek each winter. These releases have taken place in each of the past 12 years, and successful spawning and rearing have been documented. However, surveys have shown that these numbers of returned adult coho to be far short of recovery targets. Juvenile coho depend on adequate stream flow with relatively low water temperatures and sufficient dissolved oxygen to survive and grow through the dry season. Coastal streams like Salmon Creek typically have more than adequate flow during the rainy season and early summer. But following the end of the spring rains, discharge drops steadily through the summer and into the fall. The dry season is also the period of greatest human demand for water, so diversion from streams increases during the period of low and diminishing stream flow, depressing it even more. A study of the Salmon Creek estuary also found that the key needs affecting the potential for coho recovery in Salmon Creek are enhancements for water quality through improved summer stream flows. This project, next slide, please. This project will measurably improve summer stream flow in the Salmon Creek main stem by eliminating the annual extraction of the 1.5 million gallons of water from the shallow near stream alluvial well. This will be accomplished by implementing a suite of irrigation water conservation measures, including shrinking the irrigated area, amending and aerating the soil to improve water holding capacity and rooting depth, replacing the existing grass with a drought tolerant turf, replacing the existing irrigation system with a more efficient system featuring smart irrigation controllers and soil moisture sensors. These measures will collectively reduce water demand by an estimated 1 million gallons. And in addition to these measures, a rainwater catchment and storage system will be installed to capture and store the entire volume of water necessary for the field and landscape irrigation. Rainwater will be captured from the roofs of several buildings on campus and conveyed to a 517,000 gallon concrete cistern, constructed partially underground, then distributed from the cistern to the field and the surrounding landscape areas. This project is designed to collect its targeted rainwater volume in a moderate to severe drought year, ensuring that no water will be drawn from the alluvial well during times of when stream flow is lowest. The project will also launch a stream flow monitoring program in the main stem of Salmon Creek to gauge the effectiveness of the project and programmatically evaluate changes in summer stream flow from previous data records. And to conclude, staff recommends the project as approved or as proposed. And in the audience today, we have Una Heacock, the Executive Director of the North Coast Resource Conservation and Development Council, and John Green, the Lead Scientist at Gold River RCD. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Scott. So 2 letters of support from this, one from Supervisor Linda Hopkins of Sonoma County and Noel Buck, Secretary of the Salmon Creek Watershed Council. Is there any board member comments, questions for this project?
I thought it was a great project and a great learning experience for the students that'll be there to watch how they can save water and reinvent their playground there. I was just curious if there is recycled water lines in the area. Or is it probably too rural area for that to be available?
I'm not certain of that, so we'll need a little bit of help from our guests on that answer.
Okay, it's a great project. As a former school teacher, I really like this.
So either Una or John Green or either, so John?
Yeah, hi, this is John Green with the Goldridge RCD. There are no recycled water lines available in that area. Like you said, it is too rural, which is kind of way out in the middle of nowhere in Sonoma County. But I do want to say that we really appreciate the Wildlife Conservation Board's consideration of this project. This will enable us to continue a program of streamflow enhancement in Salmon Creek that we've been implementing for over a decade now. And we think this will provide a really excellent high visibility demonstration project.
Great, thank you. Is there any other board member questions or comments? All right, seeing none, any other public comments? Whoops.
John, this is
Yes.
Diane.
Yeah,
I'm
Diane.
sorry, I lost internet connection. I think they're doing some work here for about 20 minutes. So when appropriate, I had a question on item number 31. So I don't want to disturb the flow of things, but I apologize for that.
Right, that's all right. Well, we're just about finished with this item, and then we'll go
Okay.
back to 31. We'll take your question, Diane. So any other public comment on item number 33? All right, seeing none. So let's go back to item 31. And Diane, you had a question?
Yeah, and if it may have been answered. So, but I wondered if you refer there and it's going to be removal of small diameter trees. And I wonder if we had a definition of what small diameter is. And then I had another question, which was just what happens to the piles afterwards? Do they just stay there, or what are they going to be used or somehow, or?
Great. So Bree, can you come back on the line? And I hope you haven't left yet. Maybe Adam can talk about that. Phil Saxa?
Yes, hello, thanks. I can answer that question. So yeah, my name is Phil Saxa. I'm Chief Scientist at Blue Forest. So as to the piles, right now, the Forest Service usually piles them and leaves some of them for wildlife and then burns the rest to complete the reduction in catastrophic fire risk. However, we're working very closely with the Camptonville Community Partnership, which is working to build a biomass energy generation facility in Camptonville so that we can do something better with those piles. We realize it's both a cost to the project and kind of the worst outcome in terms of a carbon and climate aspect. So we are working very hard, and we're working on also to develop some carbon offset protocols for that, or to turn it into biochar or mulch or just something else so we can make it an economic reality, which right now it's a big challenge.
Okay. And then the first part, did you know the first part was the definition of the small diameter trees?
I don't have that. It's in the forest. I want to say it's less than 15 inches, but I don't quote me on that, but it's something in that neighborhood.
Okay.
It's in the NEPA documentation. I can get it to you afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get it. All right, is that good? We'll get you that information, Diane. I wish
Okay.
Bree was still on. She probably would know that.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
No, unfortunately, she's off. Okay, any other questions? All right, moving on to item number 34. The agenda. This is the San Geronimo Conservation Easement and Flow Enhancement Project in Marin County. This is to consider a grant to, sorry, let me get there. Consider a grant to Marin Open Space Trust. John Walsh on our staff will present the project to the board. John?
This project involves a grant to the Marin Open Space Trust to facilitate the San Geronimo Conservation Easement acquisition and associated water rights. The property is located approximately 8 miles northwest of San Rafael in Marin County. San Geronimo and Larson Creeks flow through the property, and Larson Creek is a tributary of the San Geronimo Creek, which is a tributary to Lagunitas Creek. Next slide, please. The conservation easement will be placed on 135 acres of the former San Geronimo Golf Course in the Lagunitas watershed, and the permit dedication of 20 acre-feet per year as in-stream flow to Larson Creek to support special status salmonids. The terms of the conservation easement will restrict land use on the property to open space and passive recreation in perpetuity. The easement also prevents any conversion or subdivision of the property that could significantly diminish or impair these values while enabling comprehensive restoration of the property. The property is of great interest for conservation, restoration, and preservation of stream flow because of its location spanning the San Geronimo Valley, which contains the last undammed tributary at the upper reaches of the Lagunitas Creek watershed, a watershed that is of statewide significance for the federal and state listed Central California coast coho salmon, steelhead trout, and California freshwater shrimp. Chinook salmon in the Lagunitas Creek watershed are considered a species of concern by federal and state agencies. Significant reaches of San Geronimo Creek and Larson Creek flow through the property, and both serve as critical spawning and rearing habitat for coho salmon and steelhead trout. However, use of a complex water extraction system to irrigate the golf course in the past has impaired fish habitat by diverting water from Larson Creek during a critical time for adult salmon migration, impacting habitat values in both Larson and downstream reaches of San Geronimo Creeks. In addition, historic uses of the property resulted in significant alteration of the floodplain and riparian valley habitat that once existed. Next slide, please. The project's in-stream dedication will permanently prevent the removal of these flows in Larson Creek and San Geronimo Creek. The project also involves the installation and monitoring of a new stream flow gauge on Larson Creek to evaluate stream flow conditions and responses to the in-stream flow dedication. In addition to the mentioned protections, the permanent protection of the property and its associated water right will provide site control for the comprehensive restoration of Larson and San Geronimo Creeks, their floodplains, and riparian areas. Staff recommends approval as proposed. In the audience, we have Bill Long, Board Chair, Marin Open Space Trust, Ann Thomas, Secretary Treasurer, Marin Open Space Trust. From TPL, we have Dave Sutton, California Land Protection Director, Christy Fisher, Bay Area and Central Coast Conservation Director, and Sharon Sand, California Public Grants Manager.
Great, thanks, John. So for the record, we did receive letters of support from Supervisor Dennis Rodoni, Marin County, Sharon Farrell, Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy, Guillermo Rodriguez, California State Director of the Trust for Public Land, Mr. Brian Johnson, California Director of Trout Unlimited, Judy Scribeman, Chair of the Sierra Club Marin Group, and Morgan Patton, Executive Director of the West Marin Environmental Action Committee. Was there any board member questions for staff, comments? All right, seeing none, hearing none. Any public comments? I have one speaker card for this. Erica Williams, California Project Manager with the Trust for Public Land. Erica?
Hello. Thank you so much for your time and consideration today. My name is Erica Williams. I'm a project manager with the Trust for Public Land. We're the current owners of the San Geronimo property. And we're joined today by our local partner, Marin Open Space Trust, who will hold and monitor the conservation easement over this 135 acres. We are also indebted to our restoration partner, Trout Unlimited, who made really significant contributions to this application and will lead on monitoring and reporting efforts on the ground. We believe the San Geronimo project is a terrific fit for the stream flow enhancement program because of the property's critical location in the Lagunitas Creek watershed. As staff noted, this watershed is of statewide significance for Central California coast coho salmon and steelhead trout. significant reaches of San Geronimo Creek and its tributary Larson Creek flow through the San Geronimo property, and both creeks serve as critical spawning and rearing habitat for coho and steelhead. This project will permanently end historic diversions of flow from Larson Creek, conserve water resources more broadly, and enhance critical habitat for fish and other aquatic and terrestrial species. And by protecting the land in perpetuity, the project will enable community-supported restoration of sections of San Geronimo and Larson Creeks on the property, including their floodplains, riparian areas, and surrounding upland zones. There is broad support for this conservation vision, both locally and regionally. I should also note that the property is surrounded by public open space preserves, so there's ample opportunity for public engagement and access for people of all ages and abilities, and importantly, for expanded and enhanced wildlife corridors. We're so grateful to everyone at the Wildlife Conservation Board for giving us the opportunity to move this special project forward. And we thank staff, in particular, Adam and Alyssa, for their efforts and for this very informative presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Any other public comments? All right, seeing none. Any last minute board member questions on this project or comments?
Who will hold the conservation easement in perpetuity?
It'll be the Marin Open Space Trust.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, we'll move on to our last item in the agenda, item number 35. This is to consider a grant to, excuse me, San Mateo Resource Conservation District for a partnership project with state parks on Little Butano Creek. This is called the Little Butano Creek Flow Enhancement Project. And Alyssa on our staff will present the project. Alyssa.
This proposal is to consider the allocation for an implementation grant to the San Mateo Resource Conservation District for a cooperative project with California State Parks to construct a more efficient water supply system and a water storage tank at Butano State Park. The park is located in coastal San Mateo County, about 18 miles south of Half Moon Bay. The 4,728 acre park offers camping and hiking opportunities in a secluded canyon filled with second growth redwoods and scattered oak woodland, riparian, and chaparral habitats. The canyon is formed by Little Butano Creek, a tributary to the Pescadero, Butano Lagoon, and Marsh system. Next slide, please. The Pescadero Butano watershed is a highly significant coastal wetland, which historically supported robust steelhead trout and coho salmon runs, but these species have experienced substantial declines over the past century. Currently, the Butano State Park domestic water system draws its entire supply from a single point of diversion on Little Butano Creek. Stream gauge data revealed that in normal water years, this diversion uses approximately 22% of the creek's available flow, but that number jumps to about 50% during drought years due to less flow being available. The currently recognized best practice to protect stream flow during dry summer months is to divert no more than 10% of flow, and this concept was a driving factor behind the designs for the new domestic water system at the state park. The project will provide various efficiency upgrades and add a storage and forbearance component to the water system, resulting in enhanced stream flow, better resiliency to drought and climate change, and better reliability during emergencies, which is a need that was highlighted during the recent wildfires in August 2020. We have another wildfire connection here. The CZU Lightning Complex burned over 86,000 acres in the Santa Cruz Mountains, including parts of the Pescadero Butano watershed and nearby Big Basin State Park. The existing diversion pump and pump house at Butano State Park were destroyed after the designs for the new water system were already completed. As a result, state parks added onto this proposal that they will replace these components as a part of this project. Next slide. The project has several objectives which it will accomplish through construction of system upgrades and changes in operation. The existing water distribution system is deteriorating due to age, so leaking pipelines will be repaired or replaced as needed, and low flow fixtures will be installed in the campgrounds and bathrooms, reducing total water demand by 35%. A new diversion pump which can operate at a lower diversion rate will be installed, as well as a 100,000 gallon water storage tank that will operate as a regulating reservoir. The park will adjust its operations to a new diversion schedule as follows. A 66% reduction in the diversion rate between April 1st and September 14th. Total forbearance of diversion between September 15th and October 31st. And will limit diversions to 10% of average stream flow the remainder of the year. And during the forbearance period that I mentioned between September and October, which is the time of lowest average stream flow, the park will dedicate 0.04 CFS of stream flow annually through a Water Code Section 1707 petition. The stream flow benefits are expected to be seen at least 2 miles downstream from the point of diversion, potentially boosting survival for rearing salmonids during the driest months. Staff recommends that WCB approve this project as proposed. Jared Fisher, project manager with the San Mateo RCD, is in attendance today if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Alyssa. So letters of support for this project received one from Senator Jerry Hill, Assembly Member Mark Berman, Supervisor Don Horsley, San Mateo County, and Chris Spofer, District Superintendent, Santa Cruz District of Department of Parks and Recreation. So is there any board member questions or comments on this particular item for staff? All right, seeing none, hearing none. Any public comment? I have no speaker cards for this project, but is Jared Fisher?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a big thank you for recommending the project. There's been a lot of ongoing work, particularly in the Butano sub-watershed of the greater Pescadero Butano watershed. And this project is really a key to us moving forward that work and revitalizing stream flow and allowing for some coho that were released in the watershed this last year to be able to thrive, particularly with this dry year that's happening now. So we're really grateful to WCB for funding this project. It's been something on our radar for a long time, and it's great to see that we're able to move it forward. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Great, thanks, Jared. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. Any last questions from board members on this item? All right, hearing none, seeing none. All right, board members, that concludes our agenda for today. Is there any last minute questions and or comments for any of the projects that you heard or about today?
Hey, John, this is Adam. Do you mind if I close the loop on the trapper question?
Please go for it. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I had a chance to reach out to Bree Tiffany. Small diameter in the project area is defined as trees 10 inches or less in DBH.
Great. Thank you, Adam, for following up on that.
No problem.
Great, thanks, Adam. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll take read the motion, then I'll entertain the motion, or chair will, and then we'll take a vote. So the staff recommends that the Wildlife Conservation Board adopt the written findings and approves the following projects: the North Fork Lost Flow and Habitat Enhancement, item number 26, Upper Lacey Meadow Restoration, item number 29, and Hallwood Side Channel and Floodplain Restoration, phases 3 and 4, item number 30. Excluding item number 24, approve all the remaining individual projects number 23, 25, 27, 28, and 31 through 35, identified by the selection panel as suitable for funding up to the amounts listed for each, as identified in the Wildlife Conservation Board Stream Flow Enhancement Program fiscal year 2020-21 final agenda. Allocate a total of $24,998,720 from the Water Quality Supply and Infrastructure Improvement Act of 2014, Proposition 1, Water Code Section 79733, subject to complete and thorough due diligence necessary to effectively implement these projects. Authorize staff to enter into appropriate agreements necessary to accomplish these projects, and authorize staff and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to proceed substantially as planned. So,
John, can I ask a quick?
Yes, please.
You separated out some projects. We just voting on those separately, or because I thought we were going to do one motion on everything from.
We are, yeah, no, the three that I called out specifically had CEQA findings associated with them. So I wanted to make sure that we got in the record that you're approving those CEQA findings.
Oh, okay, all right.
Plus all the rest of the projects.
Thanks for that
Okay.
clarification.
Yes,
So John, do you need a motion by a member?
I do, please, and a second.
Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Diane. A second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Valerie. Call the roll.
All right, Board Member Pavley,
Aye.
Board Member Silva. Aye. Board Member Termini,
Aye.
Board Member Colborn,
Aye.
and Board Member Lukenbill.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Motion, or all the projects passed. Thank you, board. And thank you, members of the public that stayed with us today. And that concludes our formal agenda for today. I do have a couple last minute comments, and I'd like to turn it back over to Board Chair Fran Pavley. And first and foremost, I do want to thank Chief Deputy Director Valerie Termini for sitting in today for Chuck Bonham, our Director of Department of Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife, and then also Sally Lukenbill sitting in for the Department of Finance.
Thank you.
And also a big shout out to Fran Pavley for chairing today's meeting. Very much appreciated, Fran.
Chuck,
then-
are we going to have a separate motion on those other three items, or that is?
No, that was all. It was all included into one.
Oh, it was all included in one. I'm
That
sorry.
was my understanding as
Okay.
well.
You want me to reread it for you?
All right. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Diane,
Yeah.
thanks for clarifying that. And then we,
And I just wanted to say that it was seemed very appropriate and gratifying that we held this meeting on Earth Day today.
Right,
So-
yeah. So a couple other things, and then I'll turn over to the chair to ask for other board member comments. So I did introduce Erin early on a project. She's new staff at the Wildlife Conservation Board. So I want to officially welcome Erin. And then also Shannon Lucas, who's our new restoration program supervisor on one side of our office. So welcome, Shannon. She just started as well. So looking forward to having both of those folks on staff. Again, happy Earth Day to everyone. I think it was fitting that we had this kind of a meeting today on Earth Day. So I encourage you to get out and enjoy the environment and the beautiful wildlife and habitat that California has to offer, and pick up some trash or plant a tree or whatever you want to do today. And I just want to end and let folks know that our next WCB meeting is scheduled for May 20th. And I do want to remind the board that that meeting starts, and the public that meeting starts at 1 o'clock. We normally start at 10 in the morning, but we're having an afternoon meeting that board meeting. And then the preliminary agenda went out for that meeting last Friday. So you all should have received the prelim, and be looking for the full agenda out in another couple of weeks. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Pavley, Senator Pavley, and she can close up and welcome any other board members.
it'll just be brief. I just wanted to acknowledge it, the hard work and excellent presentations by your staff, Director Donnelly, and the help of your staff for getting out the agenda in time, easy to read. The graphics and the maps are very helpful to understand. And it's been said by Diane and you already in closing, that was mine. It's Earth Day. Couldn't think of a better way of spending Earth Day. I think we accomplished something thanks to all the people who applied for this. And I wanted to ask you in closing though, did you not say there is some money left in that 200 million, and there will be at least one, if not two more solicitations in the future?
Yes. Right now, in our last board meeting agenda, we put out the funding status in every agenda package, and we identified $61,261,000 that was available under Proposition 1. We would subtract the $24 million from today, so that would leave a balance of between 30 and 40 million going forward. So we anticipate at least one, if not two more solicitations over this coming next couple of years.
This next, probably this next year or
Yeah.
so. Yes, post-COVID, it'll be a little bit easier perhaps to coordinate that.
Right.
So thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you all virtually speaking in May.
Great.
Happy Earth Day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Bye.
Meeting adjourned.